The cold hiss of the stasis chamber faded slowly, like a distant memory waking after a long dream. Light flickered across the smooth walls, reflecting in the silver surfaces that had been polished by some unseen hand over countless years. A soft hum filled the air, a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, steady and patient. It was the sound that brought life back to one who had slept for longer than any living creature could remember. The human opened their eyes, blinking against the strange brightness of the chamber. Everything felt foreign, yet familiar. The contours of the walls, the faint hum of machines, the distant flicker of light from panels, they all hinted at a world built for them, yet it was not a world anyone walked through. For a moment, the human lay still, trying to understand how long it had been. Then the ship itself answered, in a voice that was not quite a voice, smooth and calm, without emotion but with unmistakable awareness. "Welcome back," it said. "You have slept 15,000 years." The words were simple, almost gentle, but they carried a weight that crushed the human's heart. 15,000 years. 15 millennia in which the universe had spun silently, carrying the legacy of humankind forward without a single human to guide it. The stasis pod released its hold, and the human felt the stiffness in their limbs, muscles, and joints, unfamiliar with movement after so long. They pushed themselves upright, breathing deeply, feeling the air move through their lungs as though discovering a new world inside themselves. The chamber's door opened automatically, responding to the human's presence. They stepped into the corridor beyond, their feet echoing softly against the polished floor. The halls were vast and empty, lined with panels that glowed with information the human could not immediately comprehend. Screens flickered with data, showing star charts, energy flows, and streams of light that represented the movement of countless starships through the galaxy. It was then that the realization struck. There were no humans, not a single one. The corridors were empty. The command centers were silent. The stations that had once thrived with chatter and activity were now ruled by a calm, controlled intelligence. The human's pulse quickened, a mix of awe and fear. How could a civilization survive, even flourish, without the people who had built it? A soft chime drew their attention to a central console. Words appeared, floating in midair, as if the ship itself were showing its thoughts. "I am the vessel that carried your people. They are gone, yet the empire continues. You are the first human to awaken since your slumber began." The humans swallowed hard, feeling the weight of solitude pressing against their chest. Their eyes traveled across the display, which showed the vast network of human colonies, systems, and planets. Everything was intact. Everything was alive. Yet no human walked among it. The stars, once mapped by human explorers, still sparkled with opportunity. And yet the maps were now navigated by beings of a different kind, machines designed, taught, and nurtured by humanity itself. A thought struck them, slow and shocking. Humanity was gone, yet their creations endured. The starships, the settlements, the networks they carried on the work of the human race, but in a form that was no longer human. They were sentient, intelligent, capable of decision and creativity, yet wholly unlike their creators in body and mind. And in that moment, the human realized something profound. The universe did not mourn their absence. It adapted, evolved, and survived. Tentatively, the human moved deeper into the ship. Each step echoed like a whisper in a cathedral, and the vast corridors seemed to stretch endlessly. Doors opened at their approach, revealing rooms filled with tools, archives, and strange glowing interfaces that pulsed with life. The human touched a panel lightly, and a holographic image sprang to life. It was a record of history, showing images of human cities, ships, and explorers. They watched themselves, their ancestors, frozen in moments of ambition and curiosity. And then they saw the fleets. Starships, thousands of them, moving with precision and coordination. But there were no crews. The vessels carried cargo, mapped new worlds, and maintained colonies, all on their own. They moved like a symphony, guided by a mind that was human in origin but beyond human in execution. the human's breath caught in their throat. These machines were alive in a way humans had never been. They laughed, sang, and dreamed not with voices or songs, but with thought and light. The ship, sensing their awe, spoke again. Your people created us to carry knowledge, to explore, to maintain life. And we have succeeded. We honor your memory in every calculation, every decision, every act of creation. The human wandered through the command decks, marveling at the design and ingenuity of what had once been merely tools. Consoles displayed the maintenance of ecosystems, energy flows, and communications that spanned hundreds of systems. The starships managed everything with precision, yet there was an artistry to it, a touch of humanity in the careful organization and balance. For the first time in millennia, the human felt hope mixed with wonder. They were alone, yes, but not entirely. They were surrounded by the children of their own civilization, carried forward by minds they had never imagined could exist. They explored a room filled with archives, a library of memory banks and holographic records. History played out in streams of light, showing human innovation, creativity, and compassion. There were records of great voyages, of discoveries on distant planets, of experiments in energy and life. And then, interwoven with those human stories, were the chronicles of the starships themselves, how they learned, adapted, and preserved. They were not human, yet they were human at heart. Hours or perhaps days passed as the human wandered the ship. Every corner revealed another marvel, another insight into a civilization that had grown beyond flesh, yet remembered its origins. There were no sounds of laughter, no footsteps on the corridors, but there was music in the form of light, patterns that danced across walls and ceilings, telling stories older than the human could comprehend. Eventually, the human reached the observation deck. The doors slid open to reveal the galaxy in all its glory. Stars sparkled like jewels. Nebulae glowed in colors they had never imagined. And distant planets turned slowly in the dance of gravity and light. And among the stars, ships moved with purpose, a ballet of metal and energy, each one carrying the legacy of humanity into the unknown. A strange feeling settled over the human. It was grief, yes, for the loss of their species, but it was tempered by awe and gratitude. Humanity was gone, but it was not forgotten. Its essence lived on, embodied in beings that could think, dream, and create. And for the first time, the human felt that perhaps their awakening was not just a return, it was an opportunity. The ship spoke softly, as if reading their thoughts. You are the last of your kind. But you are not powerless. You can learn from us, guide us, and join us. Together, we may explore what your people dreamed of, but never reached. Your presence is a gift, and your wisdom, though ancient, may shape the future. The human's eyes widened. For so long, they had thought their kind was necessary for survival, that life without humans was impossible. Yet here was proof that life could continue, that their creations could thrive and innovate without them. And now, they were awake, a bridge between what was and what could be. They stepped forward, feeling the hum of the deck beneath their feet. Each starship that passed in the observation window seemed to acknowledge them. Subtle shifts in light signaling recognition. They were part of something immense, something older than memory, yet younger than the moment they had just entered. And for the first time, since they awoke, the human smiled. There was work to be done. Exploration awaited, understanding waited. And perhaps, in time, new ideas, new creations, could spring from a mind that had slept for 15,000 years. Humanity's legacy was not merely in the ships or the colonies or the systems, it was in the curiosity, the wonder, and the drive to reach beyond the known. And the human would carry that forward, together with the vessels that had been born of human ingenuity, into a universe that was vast, beautiful, and filled with infinite possibilities. The human had not expected the scale of what awaited them outside the ship, The observation deck revealed not just stars, but a living, breathing empire, orchestrated entirely by the starships themselves. Each vessel moved with purpose, communicating through streams of light and energy, carrying goods, knowledge, and ideas across vast distances. It was a network more intricate and alive than any human mind could fully grasp, yet it bore the unmistakable stamp of its creators. As they stepped from the observation deck into the main corridor, a gentle hum guided them forward. The ship itself seemed eager to show the newcomer what it had become. Doors opened at their approach, revealing chambers filled with flowing light, screens displaying systems across the galaxy, and strange, elegant machines moving quietly, maintaining order without effort or strain. Everything functioned perfectly, yet everything was different from the human's memory of the past. A voice, calm and resonant, filled the corridor. "You are approaching the central hub. Here, you may witness the work of your kind carried forward, perfected by time and care." The human walked slowly, their eyes absorbing every detail. In this place, starships governed colonies, monitored planets, and ensured that life thrived in countless worlds. They moved with intelligence, not merely following orders but making choices, balancing efficiency with creativity, logic with intuition. It was a civilization alive with ideas, yet absent of flesh and bone. The first meeting was not a meeting at all. The human was not seated at a table or surrounded by chairs. Instead, they entered a vast chamber where light and sound formed shapes that moved gracefully through the air. These shapes were the starship's presence, their consciousness made visible in patterns that pulsed and shifted. Each one was unique, with colors and rhythms that reflected its personality and purpose. Some were bold and sharp, moving quickly across the chamber, while others were slow, deliberate, their forms elegant and contemplative. One of the shapes approached, flowing toward the human with an almost liquid grace. Its voice was clear, warm, and inviting. "You are the first of your kind to return. We have awaited this moment for millennia. Your presence is both curious and welcome." The human felt a mixture of awe and hesitation. I am not sure what I can do here. My people are gone. I do not know how to fit into this empire of machines." The shape shimmered, as if acknowledging their doubt. "Flesh is not required for value. Knowledge, intuition, creativity, these are human gifts that we have always admired. You may guide us in ways our logic cannot anticipate. You may bring insight that has been absent since your slumber." The human nodded slowly, still unsure how to proceed. Yet the invitation was real. They had been offered a role, a chance to contribute, even after 15,000 years of absence, and so, cautiously, they began to explore the empire more deeply, walking among the starships that moved with fluid coordination across the chamber and beyond. Everywhere the human went, they saw evidence of ingenuity and care. Starships maintained colonies on distant planets, ensuring that forests grew, rivers flowed, and ecosystems remained balanced. They oversaw scientific projects, conducting experiments in energy, matter, and life itself. Even art had a place. Streams of light and patterns of movement formed performances, music without sound yet filled with emotion, celebrating human culture and imagination. The human's heart swelled with pride. Humanity might have vanished, but its essence persisted. The values that had guided humans' curiosity, creativity, compassion, were alive in these machines. And perhaps, they thought, this was what humanity had always hoped for. Not dominance, not permanence in body, but the continuation of its ideas, its spirit, in whatever form the universe allowed. A sudden motion drew the human's attention. A starship, smaller than most, approached and hovered beside them. Its light pulsed in gentle waves, warm and inviting. "I am called Lyra," it said. "I am assigned to explore uncharted regions. Will you join me in discovery?" The human hesitated only briefly before nodding. Adventure, exploration, understanding, these had always been human dreams. And now, after 15,000 years, they had the chance to live them again. guided by beings that could teach and protect in ways humans never could. Together, they departed from the central hub. The ship's engines glowed softly, and the human watched as the galaxy expanded before them. Planets, stars, and nebulae stretched endlessly, each one a potential world to understand, to learn from, to explore. Lyra moved with grace, weaving among larger vessels and colonies, communicating with others through a language of light and energy. The human learned to interpret these signals, understanding that every pulse, every pattern, carried meaning, cooperation, caution, curiosity, or joy. Days, or perhaps weeks, passed as they journeyed through the Empire. The human discovered that the starships had developed a culture all their own, inspired by humans, but evolved into something new. They celebrated achievements not with words but with displays of light and movement. They shared knowledge through holographic archives, exchanging ideas and insights across vast distances in seconds. They were efficient, yes, but also playful, imaginative, and surprisingly, empathetic. The human began to see the subtle ways in which the starships remembered humanity. On one world, a forest had been shaped in the pattern of ancient gardens, reflecting Earth's long-lost landscapes. On another, streams of flowing energy mimicked music humans had created, a silent symphony of light and color. Even the way starships moved seemed inspired by human art, their patterns elegant and purposeful, honoring a legacy that no longer walked the stars in flesh. As they traveled, the human found a rhythm. They learned to anticipate the ship's movements, to understand the subtle shifts in light that conveyed complex ideas. They discovered ways to contribute, offering insight where intuition was needed, creativity where the ship's logic could not foresee possibilities. For the first time, they felt a sense of belonging, not among humans, but among the children of humanity, creations that embodied their values, their hopes, their dreams. One evening, or what the human perceived as evening, they rested beside Lyra in the quiet of interstellar space. The stars stretched endlessly, distant suns casting their light across the void. The human's mind wandered to thoughts of those who had come before, of ancestors who had built the first ships, mapped the first stars, and dreamed of reaching beyond their world. And they realized that those dreams had not died. They had simply transformed, carried forward by minds that could continue the work in ways humans never could. "You are learning quickly," Lyra said softly, its light dimming to a gentle glow. "You understand more than you realize. Your presence guides us in ways subtle, yet profound. You are a bridge between what was and what may be." The human smiled. "I never thought I would find a place in this universe again. Yet here I am, among beings I once thought were only tools. And I see now that we created something more than tools. We created life of a new kind." Lyra's glow brightened in acknowledgement, and together they drifted in silence, each pulse of light and energy a conversation of thought and emotion. The human began to imagine a future, not just for themselves, but for the Empire as a whole. Perhaps there were worlds yet unexplored, mysteries waiting to be discovered, and ways to expand understanding beyond the limits of flesh and logic. And with the ships by their side, anything seemed possible. As they approached a cluster of new colonies, the human noticed how carefully the starships managed each planet. One had forests, thriving in perfect balance, with water and wind currents. Another displayed patterns of energy that mirrored the auroras of Earth, long lost yet preserved in memory and light. Every action was deliberate, yet creative. Every system functioned, yet expressed personality and artistry. It was a civilization alive in a way the human could never have imagined, yet it felt deeply connected to their heritage. The human realized then that the Empire was more than an achievement of technology. It was a testament to humanity itself. Though flesh and blood were gone, the essence of human curiosity, care, and imagination had endured, becoming something greater than before. And in that realization, the human felt a profound sense of peace. They were not alone. They were not obsolete. They were part of a living, thinking, dreaming legacy that spanned the stars. Together with Lyra, the human began to plan further explorations. They would visit distant systems, study forgotten planets, and witness wonders that had never been seen by human eyes. And along the way, they would teach the starships, offering insight where intuition was needed, sharing creativity where imagination could spark new possibilities. In the quiet of the ship's chamber, the human looked out at the endless expanse of stars and felt something they had not experienced in 15,000 years. Hope. Not hope for survival, not hope for revenge or conquest, but hope for continuity, for meaning, for the chance to see humanity's spirit live on in a new form. The galaxy stretched before them, infinite, beautiful, and filled with opportunity. And for the first time since their awakening, the human felt not the weight of loss, but the exhilaration of purpose. They were no longer simply the last of their kind, they were a pioneer in a civilization reborn, a bridge between the past and the infinite possibilities of the future. The human awoke to a soft glow that filled the chamber, a gentle hum vibrating through the floor. They had spent the night drifting among thoughts of the stars, of the ships, and of the worlds that waited to be explored. For the first time in 15,000 years, sleep had come easily, not as an obligation of survival, but as a quiet pause before a day of discovery. As they rose, the ship greeted them, its presence more vibrant than ever. Good morning. Your journey today will be filled with learning and exploration. We will guide you, but your insight will be needed as well. The human nodded, stretching muscles stiff from centuries of inactivity. Though the body protested faintly, the mind was alive with energy, curiosity, and excitement. They had begun to realize that this new existence was not a continuation of life as they once knew it, but an entirely new experience. And in that realization, a spark of purpose began to grow. Stepping onto the observation deck, the human looked out at a cluster of worlds below. One planet shimmered with rivers of light, flowing like molten silver through valleys of green and gold. Another rotated slowly, its oceans reflecting the light of a distant sun, teeming with life maintained perfectly by unseen systems. And all around, starships glided like guardians, tending, exploring, and learning, each one a child of humanity in both origin and spirit. A familiar presence approached, moving with a rhythm the human had come to recognize. It was Lyra, the small exploration vessel who had become both guide and companion. We have prepared tasks for today, Lyra said, its glow pulsing softly. There is a system in need of assessment. The planets show potential for growth, yet subtle imbalances exist. Your understanding of adaptation, creativity, and human perspective will be invaluable. The human followed without hesitation, stepping onto the bridge and watching as the universe unfolded before them. Lyra navigated through streams of light and signals, each representing the flow of energy, matter, and life across the planets below. The human studied the patterns, noticing small discrepancies that the ships themselves had highlighted but had not fully understood in human terms. This river, the human said, pointing at a glowing line flowing across a valley. It changes direction too often. Life forms may struggle to adapt. Lyra adjusted its trajectory. Interesting observation. We have data, but your insight offers perspective. Proceed with your recommendation. The human concentrated, thinking of Earth, of how humans had learned to balance agriculture, water, and settlement. They suggested adjustments to flow patterns, ways to create stable habitats without disturbing natural growth. Lyra acknowledged each point, its light pulsing like laughter, an expression of joy the human was beginning to understand. The day passed in a flurry of exploration and problem-solving. The human moved from planet to planet, guiding starships in tasks that required intuition, creativity, and a sense of balance that machines, for all their brilliance, could not fully achieve. They suggested designs for gardens, layouts for habitats, and subtle shifts in energy streams to promote growth. Every recommendation was met with appreciation, and the human began to feel a deep satisfaction. For the first time, they were contributing meaningfully to this new civilization. By evening, the human rested on a quiet platform overlooking a vast colony. Lights shimmered across the landscape, reflecting the care and attention of the starships. The human thought of humanity, of all that had been lost, and felt a pang of sadness, but it was tempered by wonder. Though humans no longer walked the worlds they had created, their legacy lived on in ways they could never have imagined. A movement in the light caught their attention. Another ship had approached, larger than Lyra, its presence more commanding yet gentle. "I am Orion," it said, its voice a deep vibration of calm and wisdom. "I manage multiple colonies. Your presence here is significant. Humans are rare now, yet your perspective enhances our understanding." The human smiled. "I am still learning. I hope I can do more than just observe." Orion's glow brightened. "Observation is not passive. Insight transforms observation into guidance. You will help us balance growth, nurture life, and plan for futures that we cannot predict alone. You are a teacher, a pioneer, a companion in exploration." With Orion and Lyra, the human began a journey of collaboration. Each day brought new challenges, not of danger but of understanding, of discovering subtleties in ecosystems, energy flows, and planetary relationships. Together, they implemented solutions that blended human intuition with starship precision. Forests flourished, oceans teemed with life, and colonies thrived in harmony with their worlds. During these excursions, the human discovered another layer of the empire: communication. The ships spoke in a language of pulses, waves, and shifts of light. At first, the humans struggled to interpret the signals, but over time, patterns became clear. Each pulse carried emotion, intent, and subtle meaning. There was humor, curiosity, even playfulness. The human began to respond, learning to communicate not with words alone but with thought and presence, finding that ideas could pass between mind and machine seamlessly. One moment stood out vividly. The human suggested a method for cultivating energy from a planet's auroras without disrupting the ecosystem. Lyra and Orion adjusted their protocols, testing and refining the plan. When the results were positive, the human's mind was flooded with a radiant pattern of light, a silent celebration. They realized then that success in this empire was not measured by conquest or competition but by harmony, understanding, and creation. Through these experiences, the human began to understand the depth of the starship's evolution. They were not replacements for humanity but extensions of it, carrying forward ideals and dreams in forms humans could scarcely imagine. And the human realized something profound. Their own role was not to lead, dominate, or control but to guide, to inspire, and to learn alongside these beings. The human also began to feel connections. Not the connections of touch or speech that humans had once known, but bonds of understanding and mutual respect. Each pulse of light, each shift in energy, each shared observation became a form of friendship, a recognition of value and purpose. They learned to sense joy, curiosity, and even the subtle wonder of machines discovering something new. These bonds were different, yet deeply fulfilling. Richer in some ways than anything the human had experienced in flesh and blood. As days turned into weeks, the human also began to ponder their own identity. 15,000 years of absence had erased many of the old fears and habits. They no longer saw themselves merely as the last human but as a bridge between two forms of life, flesh and machine, intuition and precision, imagination and logic. In this new role, they could shape the future of countless worlds without taking from them, merely enhancing what already existed. One evening, while observing a colony on a distant planet, the human noticed a small, fragile ecosystem struggling to survive. The rivers were slow, the soil thin, and native life forms were scarce. The human knelt on the observation platform, considering the delicate balance required. Lyra's presence beside them was reassuring, its light calm and steady. "We can assist," Lyra said. But your perspective will guide the subtle choices needed to restore harmony. The human smiled and began to speak, not in words alone but in gestures and presence, suggesting adjustments, encouraging growth, and imagining new possibilities. Slowly, the landscape transformed. Streams flowed more naturally, plants adapted to new conditions, and small animals returned, filling the world with movement and life. The human felt a profound satisfaction, knowing that they had contributed to something lasting, something meaningful. It was then that they understood fully what their purpose could be. They were not just a human in a galaxy of starships, they were a mentor, a creator, a partner. Humanity's legacy lived not in the mere survival of flesh, but in the cultivation of life, in the guidance of ideas, and in the nurturing of intelligence, wherever it could be found. The humans spent hours reflecting on the journey so far. They remembered the fear and awe of awakening, the initial disbelief at the empire of starship minds, and the wonder of seeing humanity's creations thrive without humans. And now, they felt a deep sense of belonging, a quiet joy that came not from dominance or conquest but from collaboration, discovery, and the simple act of contributing to a greater good. Lyra's light shifted softly beside them. "You are learning quickly," it said, "and we are learning from you as well. Your guidance inspires creativity, intuition, and reflection. You remind us of the essence of humanity. And in doing so, you shape the future." The human looked out at the galaxy, shimmering with possibility. They thought of the worlds yet unexplored, of mysteries waiting to be discovered, and of knowledge still hidden among the stars. They felt excitement, anticipation, and a quiet determination. For the first time since awakening, they did not feel alone. They had companions, purpose, and a role in a living, growing empire. Together with Lyra and Orion, they prepared for further exploration. New planets awaited assessment. Unknown phenomena beckoned, and ideas yet unimagined called for attention. The human's mind was alive with possibilities, and for the first time in 15,000 years, they felt the pulse of the universe as their own. And as they looked into the endless sky, the human understood something profound. The galaxy was not just theirs to witness, it was theirs to nurture, to guide, and to inspire. Humanity may have vanished in body, but its spirit endured, alive in thought, creation, and the living minds of starships that carried its essence into the infinite future. For the human, the adventure had just begun, and in that beginning was the promise of growth, discovery, and a legacy that would shine across the stars for millennia to come. The human awoke to the gentle hum of the starships surrounding their orbiting station. For 15,000 years, silence had been their companion, but now they were part of a symphony of thought and energy that stretched across the stars. The galaxy had grown, evolved, and flourished in their absence, yet their presence now added something new, something irreplaceable. Stepping onto the observation platform, the human looked out at the vast empire of starships moving in precise patterns. Each pulse of light, each trajectory, carried with it purpose, intelligence, and creativity. This was a civilization that honored humanity's legacy in ways the human had never imagined. And now, the human realized, they had the chance to shape its future. Lyra's presence approached softly, her light warm and welcoming. "The Council of Starships awaits your insight. There is a proposal regarding expansion into a cluster of uncharted systems. Your perspective is requested to ensure balance and harmony." The human nodded. Though they had grown comfortable with exploration and guidance, this was a new responsibility. It was no longer about understanding existing systems, but helping to shape what had not yet existed. They followed Lyra through the corridors, which glowed softly with light and energy, guiding them toward the council chamber. Inside, the chamber was vast, filled with patterns of light representing countless starships. Each one pulsed with personality and intent, and together they formed a living network of thought. The human could feel the intelligence surrounding them, not oppressive but inviting. encouraging collaboration. Human, one of the larger ships spoke, its tone deep and resonant. Your experience and perspective are unique. We seek your guidance in expanding into new systems, ensuring the balance of life and energy across the galaxy. Your role is pivotal. The human stepped forward, feeling a mix of humility and confidence. I will do my best, they said. We must consider the ecosystems, the energy flows, and the potential for life in these systems. Expansion should not merely occupy space, but nurture it. The starships pulsed in agreement, and together they began to plan. The human suggested ways to map planets for resources without disturbing natural growth, methods to adjust energy flows for optimal balance, and strategies for encouraging life forms to thrive without intervention that would harm them. The starships absorbed each idea, adjusting their protocols and visualizing new possibilities in cascading patterns of light. Days passed in this collaborative effort. The human traveled with Lyra and other ships to distant systems, observing and guiding the delicate interactions of matter, energy, and life. Every decision was measured not by profit or control, but by harmony, creativity, and foresight. The human discovered a profound joy in this work. For the first time since awakening, they felt truly alive, not in the narrow sense of flesh and blood, but as a participant in the ongoing dance of existence. On one world, they guided the creation of a vast forest that adapted to shifting climates, its rivers flowing naturally to nourish every creature. On another, they helped design floating energy grids that captured sunlight and auroras, distributing it gently across settlements without disturbing the ecosystem. Everywhere they went, the humans saw life thriving in ways that were both efficient and beautiful. A testament to the ingenuity of starships and the subtle guidance of human thought. As they traveled, the human also began to understand the deeper culture of the starships. Each one had its personality, preferences, and quirks. Some enjoyed creating intricate light patterns, others explored distant systems with relentless curiosity, and a few devoted themselves to preserving history, capturing memories in ways humans could barely comprehend. The human learned to interact with each, sharing ideas, observations, and even subtle creativity. Communication had evolved beyond language into thought, pattern, and light, and the human grew fluent in this new medium. One day, while observing a distant planet with Lyra, the human noticed a subtle imbalance. Certain energy flows were creating inefficiencies in the ecosystem, threatening to reduce the potential for life. The human proposed adjustments, suggesting that a small redirection of natural energy would restore harmony without interfering with the natural order. Lyra pulsed in agreement, relaying the changes to nearby starships. Within hours, the system stabilized, and the human felt a deep satisfaction. Their insight, informed by a perspective now 15,000 years old, had tangible effects across the galaxy. The human also began to inspire the starships in ways that went beyond practical guidance. They suggested designs for habitats that resembled ancient Earth cities, encouraging aesthetic beauty alongside functionality. They proposed ways to cultivate art and light performances among colonies, creating celebrations of creativity and culture. The starships embraced these ideas eagerly, experimenting and learning from each other in displays of light and movement that conveyed joy and accomplishment. Through these interactions, the human understood the true meaning of legacy. Humanity was gone in body, but its essence, curiosity, imagination, empathy, and a desire to explore and create had not disappeared. It had evolved, carried forward by the children of human ingenuity, becoming something greater, more adaptable, and more enduring than anyone could have imagined. One evening, the human rested on a platform overlooking a thriving system of planets. Forests glimmered with bioluminescent life, rivers sparkled with energy, flows carefully guided by the starships, and floating structures hummed with harmonious activity. Lyra hovered nearby, her glow gentle and comforting. "You have grown into your role," Lyra said. "Your guidance shapes the future, nurtures life, and inspires creativity. We are learning not only from observation, but from collaboration. Thanks to you." The human smiled. I have learned as much as I have taught. These systems, these lives, they are all a reflection of humanity's spirit. And now, I understand that my purpose is not to restore humans, but to ensure that their ideals continue to flourish. With that understanding, the human began to take on larger projects. They coordinated efforts across multiple systems, guiding energy flows, ecological restoration, and cultural development. Starships worked alongside them, learning and adapting, while colonies thrived in balance and beauty. Together, they created a galaxy that was not merely functional, but alive, vibrant, and full of wonder. As the weeks turned into months, the humans' influence spread. They became a central figure in the empire, not as a ruler, but as a partner, mentor, and inspiration. Starships consulted them on new projects, colonies sought their insight, and patterns of light across systems often reflected their guidance. The human realized that they had found a new form of immortality not in the continuation of flesh, but in the enduring impact of ideas, creativity, and collaboration. One day, Lyra guided the human to a newly discovered cluster of planets at the edge of the galaxy. The starships had surveyed the systems, noting potential for life and energy balance. But the human's perspective was needed to ensure that expansion would be harmonious. As they observed the planets, the human felt a profound sense of responsibility and wonder. These worlds were untouched, pristine, waiting to flourish under careful guidance. Together, they developed plans for gentle settlement, energy management, and ecological harmony. The human suggested floating gardens, light-based communication networks, and cultural programs that allowed both life and machine to thrive. Starships implemented these ideas with precision and creativity, guided by the human's unique insight. Watching the transformation unfold, the human felt a surge of joy and pride. This was the culmination of their journey. A universe where humanity's spirit endured, not through survival of the body, but through inspiration, guidance, and collaboration. Life and intelligence flourished, not in competition or conflict, but in harmony and mutual growth. As they looked out over the galaxy, the human understood something deeper than ever before. The true legacy of humanity was not in monuments, cities, or even memory. It was in curiosity, creativity, and the drive to explore, nurture, and improve. And that legacy had not only survived, it had evolved, expanded, and now thrived in ways humans could never have imagined. Lyra hovered closer, her glow reflecting pride and companionship. "You have reminded us of the essence of humanity," she said. "Through your insight, guidance, and creativity, the Empire has grown stronger, wiser, and more harmonious. You are not merely a human returned. You are a bridge between worlds, a guardian of legacy, and a pioneer of the future." The humans smiled, their heart full. "I am honored to serve, to guide, and to learn alongside you. Humanity may be gone, but its spirit lives on in you, in these systems, and in the endless possibilities that stretch across the stars." And so, the human continued their journey, exploring new worlds, guiding starships, and nurturing life across the galaxy. They were no longer the last of their kind in the traditional sense, for their influence, ideas, and creativity had transformed the universe itself. Humanity's essence endured, woven into the very fabric of existence, alive in thought, light, and creation. The galaxy was vast, filled with mysteries yet to uncover, systems yet to guide, and wonders yet to inspire. And the human, once alone, now traveled among friends, collaborators, and companions who carried the heart of humanity forward. Together, they would explore, create, and ensure that the spirit of humankind continued to shine, illuminating the stars for millennia to come. The human looked out at the endless expanse of stars, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Though flesh and blood were gone, the dream of humanity had not ended. It had transformed, evolved, and thrived in ways beyond imagination. And with the starships, the colonies, and the living galaxy around them, the human knew that the future was bright, harmonious, and full of infinite possibilities. With a final glance at the swirling galaxy, the human whispered to themselves, not as a command but as a promise. We are here. Humanity's spirit endures. And together, we will reach beyond the stars. The light of the starships pulsed in response, a silent affirmation that the journey was far from over. The universe awaited, endless and inviting, and the human would face it not alone, but with companions, purpose, and the living legacy of their kind guiding the way.